In this job market, with everything happening from budget and staffing cuts as well as reorganizations, it can make you feel as if people don't matter, or worse, they are disposable rather than being indispensable. Almost 10 years ago, I had the pleasure of working with today's guest on a human capital initiative in the organization where we worked. I admired her leadership, people centric, big hearted focus on ensuring that all people always matter. Today, you are going to meet my friend and colleague, Dahlia Shaewitz. Dahlia and I discuss why it's more important than ever to build allyships and be an ally for others in your career, along with how to deal with a toxic work environment, and one question you must always ask yourself when building your career. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. This is the Mid-Career GPS podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrill. I help mid-career professionals like you find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven four-step formula. Today's guest, Dahlia Shaewitz, has been instrumental in creating new portfolios of work that improve employment outcomes for youth and adults with disabilities. She's an expert in knowledge translation, helping both researchers and end users to understand and effectively communicate information that can have a positive impact on our lives. She has more than 30 years of experience leading projects and teams of experts in policy, practice, and research in the areas of disability, adult literacy, and special education. She founded Third Sight LLC to center disability inclusion and to contribute to the conditions for success in work and life for people with disabilities. Dahlia Shaewitz is an IPEC certified coach and provides mentor leadership assessment combined with leadership training to support individuals to lead from any position. In 2021, she was selected by County Executive Angela Alsobrooks to serve as a commissioner for the Prince George's County Commission for Individuals with Disabilities. And in 2020, she was selected for inclusion in the Many Facets America's Women Commemorate the 100th Anniversary of the 19th Amendment, published by the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity. I hope you enjoy our conversation. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dahlia Shaewitz. Dahlia, my friend, welcome to the podcast. I am so looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. So I shared a little bit in the introduction about our opportunities where we had worked together in a previous organization and everything you've been doing since, but I want our listeners to get to know you a little bit more. And so, Dahlia, would you please share your mid-career moment with us?
I have several, but one in particular comes to mind. And I had reached out to a friend of mine who was a global HR guy. And I said, meet me for coffee. I need job advice. I told him the situation I was in. And he said, Dahlia, I think your work situation is toxic. And it might not be toxic for everyone else, but it's toxic for you. And the reason that was so meaningful is, one, it was validating that I really was struggling. But also, it helped me see there's no bad guy here. There's nothing wrong with the company I'm at. It's a fit issue. And I think sometimes that fit issue is the problem we don't recognize, right? Because we feel like we have to point the finger somewhere, and there isn't a finger to be pointed anywhere.
I really appreciate how you phrase it in that way, because so many times on the podcast, we've talked about having the right fit, and it needs to be the fit for the company, but it also needs to be the right fit for you. And when things no longer fit, that's absolutely a wake-up call to say, hey, something here needs to change.
I think that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And it can be the situation can change. Sometimes you stay long enough and the bosses change and the projects change. If the company is big enough, you can sometimes move to another team. And we had someone on our team once, and she just wasn't a fit for the team. And I told my boss, I said, this person isn't the right fit. And he said, well, you can't move someone just because of a personality. And I said, it's not about personality, it's about fit. And she moved to another team eventually and was incredibly successful
Mm.
because she found the right fit for her. It was the right project, the right tasks. So I'm a big believer in keep looking till you find a fit that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's such an important thing for everybody to remember right now. So, we're recording this episode at the end of March. We're coming out
Mhm.
of the first quarter of 2025. We know there has been a lot of change and upheaval, and we're seeing a lot of people losing jobs or seeing workplace environments be restructured and reorganized. And so, Dahlia, when you think about that mid career professional right now who is struggling to find what their fit is,
Mhm.
you do something to help your clients identify their strengths. And I'm wondering if you could share that with us.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks for asking. I have access to this tool and it's called Mentor, Mentor. It's an incredible leadership assessment tool. It's actually a battery of assessments. It takes about 2 to 3 hours to complete online. From that, you get a report that's upwards of 30 pages, lots of meat, but you also get a coaching feedback session. So you have someone talk with you about the report and they really tie it to the context that you are in. And what's great about the tool is it helps you see your strengths, yes. It also helps you see areas where you're not strong, but you decide where you want to focus your attention. Some people see their strengths and want to get even better. Some people see areas for growth and want to focus on that. But I'm a big believer in first, know your strengths. Second, know where you're not strong and decide, do I want to get better at that? I'll focus on it. Or do I want to find someone else who's really good at the thing I'm not good at? Because I don't need to be good at everything and I don't need to be an expert at everything. But I definitely want to make sure that I've got folks on my team or partnering with me who are good at the things I'm not good at so they can catch my blind spots and they can fill in the gaps that I'm not able to fill.
Dahlia, in this job market, and listening to hear you talk about this assessment and how it helps your clients, but in this job market, where do you think mid-career professionals need to spend their focus? Is it more about leaning into their strengths, or is it about closing up, say, perhaps a skill gap or a weakness?
That's so contextual and individualized. My first response is always lean into your strengths because that's where you have your confidence and that's where you'll be able to sell yourself, quotes around the word sell, but you are selling yourself, you're marketing yourself. You want to tell people what you're great at. But if you are moving into a new area where you need to develop some skills, then definitely continue to do that. But it's those are two different things. I'm getting training in order to get better at something I want to pursue, but at the same time, if I'm in the market looking for a job, now I'm selling myself. So what do I sell myself on? I'm going to put my best foot forward. I'm going to tell people what my strengths are and what I can do to add value to what they're doing.
How do you help people not come across as being salesy or convincing when they're networking or interviewing? So, if we're really helping them lean into their strengths per se, what are some things you look for in somebody to show that they're more than just being talented and an expert, but they're also being genuine and authentic and not coming across as being salesy or fake?
Well, when I am looking to hire people, one of the questions I ask is, what are your values? Right? And lately, I've also asked folks at the end of the interview, if time allows, what they're most proud of. And it
Mm.
catches people off guard. It won't anymore because I've just told you my little secret. But um, people are not expecting to be asked to brag about themselves. And I actually want to know what you are most proud of. And it's interesting, there is a little bit of a gender difference. So women will downplay, well, I did this, but I didn't do it alone. Well, none of us do anything alone. We're always collaborating with others in some way. But it's a very not sort of uplifting way to end a conversation, to give folks a chance to really brag about themselves. But back to your question, what am I looking for? I am looking for authenticity. So yes, you can tell me how great you did. I will ask questions to see where maybe you weren't as strong. And I also want to know how this company or job is going to help you grow your career, but also grow your skills. How does this work contribute to your long-term path?
That's such a great answer. Thank you for that. Dahlia, I fondly remember our interactions at our previous organization. And I remember the first time I met you and walking into a meeting, and I remember thinking it wasn't just how well connected you are, it was also about how well respected you are. It was very apparent that with the people in the room, you were looked toward as a safe, empathetic, knowledgeable, talented leader. And as I've prepped for our conversation today, it brings up this idea about allyships, where we're building our network and we're building that support system both within our organization and outside of it. I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit how you've built allyships that promoted your career. And if you can give us an example of one.
Yeah, so allyship, I think of it so many different ways. Inside the organization, I was at an organization that inadvertently, I think, contributed to competition among peers. And I am not someone who thrives in competitive spaces. I thrive in collaborative spaces. So it was almost a subversive act to reach out to people and collaborate with them and to give them credit for work instead of trying to compete to see who got the credit. I think some of the trust was built from that, from me not being about ego or getting attention. It's not really what drives me anyway. What drives me is learning. So I actually take an honest interest in learning about other people. Relationships are very important to me. So that's part of how I move in organizations. Um, but outside the company is where I really my networking outside the company it is what helped me to thrive inside the company
Mm.
because building those networks allowed me to learn from other people and bring those ideas back into the company and to present them to my colleagues and of course higher ups to grow the work that we were trying to do. So I think it's not an either or, it's a both and,
Yeah.
looking for those connections inside and outside the company.
I think it's important for us to shine a spotlight for a moment on the notion of thriving in a collaborative environment and not in a competitive environment, because that to me goes back to what you talked about earlier about fit, right? In terms of how people thrive in the workplace and where they work. What are some of the things you look for in terms of that collaborative environment that more specifically you need to be successful?
So I just want to say competition isn't bad, and some people thrive with competition. It's
Sure.
just not where I thrive. That said, I really like to have an opportunity to work with a person or an organization on a project or task to get a feel for it and to see if there is the right fit. In my line of work, I write a lot of proposals. I do a lot of business development. I will write proposals with people and how they respond, how we engage, how they think about the project task really helps me get a sense of where they're at, not only in terms of their skills or knowledge, but also in terms of how they like to engage with others. And that's a great sort of testing pad to then find out if I want to work with them more. Uh, I'm a person who believes that the pie is bigger than all the people available to eat from it. So there's always going to be more. And so by looking at things as a surplus, then I know that if something works, we'll keep going for more work together. And if something doesn't work, that's okay. I can be successful where I am, and you can be successful where you are. I hope I answered your
You
question.
did. No, thank you.
Yeah,
I think
okay,
that's
good.
that's great for everybody listening to this to kind of hear. Because again, it comes back to this whole idea about what's the right fit for you. what's the right fit that's going to allow you to be in the best company, the best environment that truly is going to allow you to thrive, where you get up every day and you're excited to go to work because you're at least looking forward to what you're doing and you feel like the place is a better fit. I think one of the things to call out too right now is that a lot of people are struggling with some of the logistics of what their fit looks like. So it's after they've been working in a hybrid environment for the last 3, 4, 5 years, now they're being told to be back at the work site 5 days a week. And so is that the best fit for them? And how are they adjusting to what that fit's going to look like? There's a lot of changes and a lot of things regarding fit that people in general may not always be paying attention to, but it's certainly impacting their life and career in those ways.
I think that's right. And I work, one of the areas I work in is the disability field. And we saw an increase in job attainment for people with disabilities nationally during COVID because suddenly people were allowed to work from home. And so a lot of people who struggle with transportation, and that's not only people with disabilities, that's people in rural areas, people who just don't have transportation access, no buses or subways. They were able to get jobs that they couldn't before. So it's disappointing to see that shift. I hope it doesn't go all the way back to only in person. I think some companies are smart and keeping that hybrid option for folks. They like the flexibility. But when it comes to fit, I wanted to also mention that sometimes fit changes. So I started out at a company and I was walking on air for 6 months. And the first couple of years there were great, but external forces shifted. So the company shifted its focus. It was no longer the fit for me that it was at the beginning of my tenure there. So things can change. And I go back to it's not a bad thing, it's just change. And so sometimes you look around and find something else because the fit has shifted for you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that because that's absolutely right and something a lot of mid-career professionals are struggling with right now. Hey there, let me jump in really quick and ask you something. When was the last time you took a step back and really thought about where your career is headed? If you're feeling stuck, uncertain, or ready for the next big move, I've got something to help you. My new journal, 30 Self-Coaching Questions for Mid-Career Professionals, is designed to help you gain clarity, set goals, and take action, all on your own terms. With powerful prompts and space to reflect, this journal is your personal GPS to navigating the next phase of your career with more confidence and greater clarity. This journal is filled with some of the same questions I ask my coaching clients, and you can grab a copy of it right now. Head on over to Amazon and search either for my name or 30 Self-Coaching Questions for Mid-Career Professionals, or you can check the show notes for the link. It is time to start building your mid-career GPS, and now it is time for us to get back to the episode. I want to bring us back for a moment because you had shared earlier in talking about fit, about being in a toxic work environment for you. And we know there are a lot of people out there and a lot of people who are listening that either have been or are in a toxic work environment. And let's just call it out, right? It's not fun. It's super stressful. It's an emotional and energetic drain and everything. What would you say to somebody that's currently in a toxic work environment that still values that power of networking and connecting? How would you help them build relationships amidst a toxic work environment?
That's a tough one. There's some quote that I can't remember exactly, but something about the situation is tough, get out of it. And if you can't get out of it, change it. And if you can't change it, how can you change your perspective on it so that you can shift into a place where you're not suffering as much? And I do think that's sort of good rule of thumb. Even in the most toxic environments, there are good people who sometimes are struggling like you are in a system that is creating some toxicity or creating a toxic culture or environment. Find those people, find those. It goes back to your conversation about your question about allyship. Find your allies, find your contacts, find your people in the organization. It can actually shift your own energy to create a more light feeling. It can give you that sense of wanting to go to work. I'm going to see John at work. I can't wait. And so there's the highlight of my day, John at the water cooler at 11 o'clock, right? And then, of course, always be networking. Networking is the number one thing you can do as a leader. I was just with someone yesterday who's been looking for work, and I said, what does your networking look like? How are you networking? And we had a great half-hour conversation about how he's looking at LinkedIn and he's reaching out beyond the people he knows to the people who know people he knows and really extending his reach, even though it's a little uncomfortable to reach out, that sort of cold call to strangers. But sometimes strangers are kind of flattered. You reach out to them. Oh, you think I can help? Oh, gosh, sure. And you're a friend of John's? Well, sure. If you're a friend of John's, I'll give you 15 minutes. Let's brainstorm. So people are actually happy to hear from you. I think that might help for folks who are feeling a little shy about reaching out to folks they don't know.
Yeah, I thank you for that too, because that opportunity to build the network is so important, especially when work is stressful and toxic and you need to find that friendly face and things like that. I remember working in one organization where I thought, oh, it'd be great to take people to like walk and talk, right? And you'd go out and you'd kind of go for a walk and everything. It'd be great. You get some movement, you get some exercise. My problem was we always ended up at the coffee shop and the bakery and I gained 10 pounds. So, so I had to reach
That's great.
all of a sudden I'm having to buy bigger clothes. And so not a great thing there. But it is that point about there is comfort, there is camaraderie, there is safety in building those relationships and those allyships. And so you're great at networking. You really know how to build relationships across so many different platforms and levels within and outside the organization. If there's one tip you could give a mid-career professional today to help them be a little bit better at building those relationships and networking, whether it be inside or outside the organization, what tip would you share with them?
I would absolutely say, what can I do for you? Okay.
Tell us more.
Everybody that I connect with, I'm thinking immediately, what do they like? What's their area of expertise? What do I know that I could contribute? If I don't know something now, I would not hesitate if I met someone today, 3 months from now, to send them an article, a podcast, a link to someone that I know who might be of interest to them. I'm always trying to think about what can I do for the other person because I want to be a value add to them. It has helped me tremendously because I do it out of a genuine interest, not because I want them to like me or I want them to do something back for me. It's not transactional. It really is about an interest in other people. And I think that a lot of folks, when they hear the word networking, and I've even had people say to me, well, I'm not gonna network with someone just to find a job, as if that was so transactional. And I said to her, this one person, I said, you're not networking for a job, you're networking for life. Everyone you come in contact with, I don't care if it's your grandma's hairdresser, you're in the shop chatting with them, you can build those connections and you just never know. The hairdresser might have a child with autism, and I happen to know a job coach who's helping kids with autism get part-time jobs. You can build connections anywhere and everywhere you go. You just never know how they will come back to you later. So, but I love people and connecting with people, so that helps too.
No, that's definitely helpful, especially the whole bit about networking for life, because you never know where a connection may lead or may take you. Um, you've got
May I say,
yeah.
sorry, just one more thing about networking. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Networking is not for extroverts,
Yes.
right? You don't have to be the super friendly, life of the party. I've got this great friend and she is super extroverted. And she said, Dahlia, I hate networking. I love meeting people, But the minute she thinks about networking, it feels transactional for her. I am a social introvert, so I've learned how to talk to people. I never used to know how to talk to people. I love to be at home alone with a good book, and I could do that 24/7. But I have a broad network because I find something that I like in people and I try to connect with that, right? Try to find those attractions, but it has nothing to do with uh, being a people person in that introvert extrovert sense of the word.
I'm glad you added that, and thank you, because I often say some of the best people who network are introverts, because they can be very focused on that one person and shape that conversation in that way. So thank you for
Right.
that. So a little heads up to all the listeners. You and I prepped a few
Mhm.
questions ahead of time. There's one you've got the question, but there's one question we've not gotten to that is going to feel like I'm abruptly turning the car here on the
Huh?
highway, because there is a piece to our conversation today we've not gotten to, which is around this piece about getting leadership experience, right?
Uh,
And so with people who are actively looking, they're looking at job postings, they're networking for positions, and they're looking at that managerial director leadership type role, and they may have never held that role in their career, but they really want to apply for that job. They want to go into that interview and showcase why they're the best fit. What would you say to somebody to help them gain leadership or executive experience if they've never held that kind of role to date in their career?
yeah, it reminds me a lot of the leadership training that I've done. People ask that question all the time, particularly if they're very early in their career, early to mid-career, because as you move up in leadership roles, you have to start taking a longer view and think more strategically. How can you get that experience to be a strategic thinker if no one ever gives you a chance to be a leader in your company, right? Or they don't view you that way? And it is, for me, always outside the organization. Let me say there are opportunities to volunteer to be on committees inside the organization, which is certainly helpful if your company is large enough to offer that. But outside the organization, the number one thing I tell people is, what do you love? What do you care about? Find a nonprofit organization where you can volunteer and do that. And if you find that the values of the organization match yours, ask them, who's on your board of directors? Do you have an opening on your board of directors? How can I either get on your board of directors or get on a committee to work with the board of directors? And a lot of people earlier in their career will say, well, gosh, I don't have enough money to give to the organization to get on their board of directors, or why would they pick me? I don't have anything to offer. And I always say, yes, you do. You have enthusiasm. You have a love for the organization. You will be its greatest salesperson. For nonprofits, it's always about bringing in money, not money in order to accomplish the mission. So there's always something you can do. I'm not talking about the Kennedy Center and having deep pockets. I'm talking about small nonprofits. There are everywhere in the country, there's a nonprofit doing something. When you get on that board of directors, you get a chance to see how systems interact with each other that impact the organization, systems internally and systems externally. And the best experience I ever had that really shot me up into leadership was being on a board of directors for a few years. It also contributed to building my networks in the community that I was in, but I learned about how they think financial strategy, people strategy, business development strategy, partnering strategy. So I got exposed to all of those things, and my input was valuable, not because I had had so much leadership experience, but because I brought a particular perspective, I brought a particular network. So to me, volunteering to be on a board of directors is one way to sort of shoot your career up a notch in a pretty quick way.
That's such great advice. And I think for anybody out there who is looking to move into that leadership type role that doesn't have that experience yet, you painted a very vivid picture for them to find something they love and to go ahead and do that. And that's something I think a lot of people right now, especially with how busy everyone is, might not be considering, but can absolutely be a great outlet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are people who are too busy to do a lot of volunteering, but you can usually do a little bit of volunteering. Most people. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about if someone couldn't do that, I'd have to give some more thought to what other opportunities there might be. Yeah.
Well, like I said, there might be, depending on the size of their organization, there might be some things within their organization they might be able to volunteer or observe or get exposed in some way to those kind of leadership opportunities that might enhance in some way.
And also, I really encourage people to remember that whatever position you're in, you are leading. You are leading from wherever you are. You might not have the job title, you might not have the influence or the access to resources, but you are bringing people with you together on a journey. You are a part of everyone else's journey that you're teaming with. So to me, everyone's a leader from where they are. It's just a matter of how far or how high you want to go. So.
Yeah. Well, Dahlia, I've enjoyed our conversation so much. I'm sure people listening have as well. We're going to start wrapping up here, but what advice would you give someone to help them build their mid-career GPS?
We've talked about so much of it, finding ways to volunteer outside your organization, build your networks, um, think about whether or not you're in the right position and the right fit. I actually have turned to job coaching, not to sell John Narrow coaching, but job coaching has helped me. I actually went back to a previous job coach, and she said, I've already given you everything that I know. I think you should find a different coach. And I said, no, you helped me. You didn't help me in the moment, but upon reflection, I look back and say, wow, that was tremendous. And I need some more of that. Kind of another shot in the arm of that coaching really helped me turn the page to the next stage of my career. So.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Dahlia, if people want to find you, connect with you, learn from you, work, hire you, whatever that might be, I'm going to turn the microphone over to you. Please share with us all the great places where people can find and connect with you.
Great. Thanks, John. My name is Dahlia Shaewitz, Shaewitz. I say that because it's such a hard name, and someone made it up on Ellis Island, and that's what I've got. You can find me at Shaewitz at thirdsitellc.com. Third Site, SIGHT, is also my website. As I mentioned, I provide leadership development training and coaching, so you can find that information on my website. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I encourage people to reach out to me. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook, but I'm not really sure I'm the most adept at social media. So LinkedIn is my go-to place. And I do other kinds of training. And as I mentioned before, I collaborate a lot. So I'm well networked with a lot of folks who know a lot of content. So happy to help people find the right match for them in any area.
Well, Dahlia Shaewitz, thank you so much for sharing your story and your tips and advice and everything today. You've been a pleasure. I'm so glad I know you. Thank you for being such a great guest on the Mid-Career GPS podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. This has been a lot of fun.
It has been a lot of fun. So, my friends, as we wrap up here, I want to leave you with this. Dahlia shared one question in today's conversation I want you to go back and think about. What are you most proud of? When you hear that question, how would you answer it? How would you answer it in a networking conversation, in a job interview, or even as you're thinking about what is your ideal fit for your career right now, or what may be in the future? Tapping into what you're most proud of will highlight your strengths, the things that you're most proud of in terms of your accomplishments, but also where you get to add the most value. In this job market right now, companies want to know what you're going to do for them. And tapping into what you're most proud of may be exactly the thing they not only want to hear, but they need to hear. And it's a vital part of building your mid-career GPS. So until next time, remember this. You will build your mid-career GPS 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how you show up matters. Make it a great rest of your day. Thank you for listening to the Mid-Career GPS podcast. Make sure to follow on your favorite listening platform. And if you have a moment, I'd love to hear your comments on Apple Podcasts. Visit johnnerrell.com for more information about how I can help you build your mid-career GPS, or how I can help you and your organization with your next workshop or public speaking event. Don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Nerrell Coaching. I look forward to being back with you next week. Until then, take care, and remember, how we show up matters.